Welcome to Alternative Dog Moms Podcast. I'm Kimberly Gauthier, the creator of Keep the Tail Wagging. For the past 9 years, I've been blogging about raw feeding, pet wellness, and life as a crazy dog mom. I've seen massive improvements in my dog's health since I started raising my dogs naturally, and I'm passionate about sharing my experience to help other pet parents.
I'm Erin Scott. For the past 9 years, I've been researching and learning everything I can about healing cancer, allergies, autoimmune, and mystery illnesses in both my dogs and myself, and I can't wait to share with you everything I've learned on this journey. As the Alternative Dog Moms, we're bringing you all the latest dog health news that we're following and sharing the tips, tricks, and resources we learn along the way. Now, let's get started. Hello, Kimberly.
Hello, Erin.
And hello, Billy.
Hi.
So we have our first guest on the Alternative Dog Moms podcast.
Yes, I'm so excited. Even though I actually, I can take advantage of Billy whenever I want to in a non, predator way. Yes.
Very interestingly phrased there.
But it's nice to have him here.
And so, Billy, you just celebrated your first anniversary with Green Juju.
Yeah. It's been a crazy year. We've released like a bunch of products. We're about to release our new fermented vegetable sort of blends. I was just there today out at the facility doing like consistency stuff with the beets. And so they are ready to go. It was actually, we were supposed to release them at the same time as the goat's milk, but they were too popular and we didn't have enough packaging. So that's a good, I guess, problem to have. And got really excited today looking at the beets, and I just, those two products are going to have such great health outcomes with animals cross country. But even last fall, we released, 4 new products, and we've got some cool stuff coming up even more this year. So I think that's going to be really cool. And, so we kind of hit the ground running, and, Kelly's been amazing to work for and is really the right fit for me. I was, didn't really know exactly what was going to happen a little bit over a year ago, and a lot of craziness, but settled into something new. And I think it's been a great sort of melding of, her vision for the company and what I bring to the company. And I like fitting my skills within that vision. So,
yeah. So why beets? Why that over all the other things that you can ferment?
Well, you can pretty much ferment most vegetables. Some are harder than others. A good example of that would be the turmeric was actually a little bit trickier in terms of the ferment because it's lower in sugar. So when you're wild fermenting and not, inoculating that with something, it's just, there's little tricks and tweaks, but there's definitely, when I was R&Ding this with the guy who runs the facility on a very small scale in our, glass, there's actually something on our social media that was like, it was like, why we ferment our turmeric. And it was a picture of turmeric in a glass jar. I think that was one of the first ones that we did successfully, but there was definitely some not successful ones, in terms of doing that. So I think that's the right fit. But the other thing too is like with product development, I feel like you start out with an idea and then it changes into something different. And it could be this. So the beets and the purple cabbage, like what they ended up being together was a totally different product concept in the beginning. And then we went through like several iterations, and that's where we ended up. And I think it's really because we wanted to bring together beets, which are going to be like great for liver detoxification, which are going to be like really high in minerals in terms of, I guess like the earthiness of them. But also, we're looking for as much, these are concentrated because they're fermented. So we're looking for as much bang for your buck as possible. So we want the deepest antioxidant tones. And if you look at how deep, beets are, they'll stain your fingers and, come through in your pee and that kind of stuff. And that really has to do with that really sort of those dark antioxidant tones. So we wanted to sort of mix that with the purple cabbage, because with purple cabbage, you're going to get not only obviously those antioxidants as well, but a really good wild ferment, because cabbage is typically a great place for bacteria. And so we thought that was kind of, the perfect combination in terms of those two things.
Awesome.
Can you tell us more about the wild ferments and what exactly that means?
So wild fermentation is not inoculating something with a starter. So if you were to take our goat's milk product, I'm going to just plug as many of our products as possible. Apparently. So if you were to take our goat's milk and then make that into a kefir, you would be inoculating that with kefir or kefir grains, right? Either one of those things. And that's the bacteria that would become prevalent and would grow in that medium, which would be eating the lactose sugars in the milk. A wild ferment means all you're doing is either adding an acid or or like salt or something like that and bringing the pH down. So basically the long story short of it is good bacteria that you're looking for grow better in a lower pH environment, whereas bad bacteria like, E. coli, Salmonella, Listeria don't. And so that's where the food safety part comes. That's why people used fermentation before there was refrigeration and things like that, because they could store things for so long. And as the pH continues to lower, more and more of those bacteria grow and lower the pH. And so there's basically no room or a good environment for bad bacteria to grow. And you get all of these amazing bacteria. And it's just different than supplementation. It's just totally different in terms of you're not getting, I take a probiotic and I give my dog a probiotic as well. But those are going to be 15 species, let's say. So with the coolest thing about using Lewis fermented golden paste or BAM's beets is every time you use a pouch, it doesn't matter if it's in the same batch or not, you're going to get different speciation of bacteria. So you're going to get different sets of bacteria and yeasts and healthy yeast. So, and all those are going to be soil based as well, because they're coming from the vegetables, they're coming from the soil. So wild ferment is just basically letting the natural bacteria that already exists sort of proliferate, which I think is really exciting because I think you get sort of better health outcomes. And it's just part of the puzzle in regards to everything I do in nutrition for my own dog, I treat as a puzzle. So if it's omega-3s, right, I'm supplementing. So this is fresh in my mind because I was just looking at a spreadsheet that I do of different things for my own dog specifically. But if you look at his omega-3s, right, 205-ish milligrams of that would be supplemental through fermented cod liver oil. But more of that is coming from, his rabbit and salmon. And more of that is coming from his egg yolk or his milk. And so you can build a puzzle that way, right? And say he gets 1,600 milligrams of omega-3 per day when you add up all the things. And it's the same thing with probiotics. I'm fermenting some kefir with Green Juju goat's milk right now in my kitchen, in my yogurt maker. And that will be a source of probiotics. He gets BAM's beets every day. So that's another source of those wild probiotics. He gets a probiotic itself. So that's another source. So we want to build it like a puzzle. And that's where the wild ferment can come in and be sort of, my goal for every dog is, a significant billions of probiotics, but in many, many species and in an environment where they can work. Because remember, the species and the environment where they can work is as important as the amount of bacteria. So that's a really long answer for that's what a wild ferment is.
No, that's exactly what I needed to know. So I was so fortunate to see you up at the Albany Expo a couple months ago. And I remember one of the things that you talked about was the diversity of microbiome and why that's so important. Can you share a little bit more, like you were just touching on, about why having the diverse microbiome is so important?
Well, one of the really cool things, just to randomly share for that, is you can look at for your own health. So we all know that so everyone in your household shares bacteria, intestinal bacteria. And also we know from studies that people who own dogs have more diverse microbiomes than people who don't own dogs, because they have another member in the house of a different species, and you're definitely sharing that bacteria, which I think is really, really interesting. in terms of how do you you can make yourself healthier by feeding your dog or your cat healthier, which I think is a concept that maybe we're just beginning to know about when it comes to the science. But, I would err on the side of like nature and how we've, sort of evolved with dogs and cats over the years. So I think that's really interesting. So, like when Huckleberry gets done eating and then goes over and licks my daughter Maple's face, that's a great thing. I think that she's getting her, aside from her, raw milk and that kind of stuff, like she's getting her probiotics as well in terms of doing that. So for me, it really comes down to, you look at the gut of a dog or, the gut of a human, and you have hundreds of different species of good bacteria, nominal sort of background flora, that kind of stuff. And so it's sort of unnatural to just inoculate with 1 to 10 species and just do it, in my opinion. And so for me, it's about, out of those, let's say, I think the number is like around 400, but out of those hundreds, how do we inoculate with hundreds on a daily basis in order to be able to because remember, probiotics are not something that you can do once and then they live, forever. You have to sort of do them every day. So if you were doing, even if you just did our raw milk without fermenting it or anything like that, you'd be getting those 200 species plus BAM's beets. You'd be getting, another, I'm not sure exactly what the number is on the wild fermented species, but you'd be getting more speciation there. And then you use our blends to feed them, because they're high in a lot of different types of fibers because it's a combination of plants. So that to me is like, if the gut is going to have hundreds of species, how do we populate with hundreds of species on a daily basis?
So I also know everybody's very excited about the goat milk. I have not been able to get it where I am
I ordered it.
They told me they were going to have it last week, and I went in over the weekend, and they were like, "Not yet."
What? Where are you located?
Not far from you, actually, in Maryland.
Oh, yeah, you should. Well, how far are you from Lancaster?
Like a little over an hour.
Oh, if you have too much trouble, just come up. I'll just take you to the facility, and you can just hand pick it up. It's easy stuff. I went to Maryland for our baby moon. Yes, that a baby moon is a thing, and I did it. Frederick is where we were.
Oh, okay. I actually work out towards that way, but I live on the other end.
That's a cool area. So funny thing about our baby moon though, so it's supposed to be like this like big romantic trip or whatever, and then we rented a cabin that was so small it had 2 twin beds. Just hilarious. And they were like on the second floor in opposite. It was crazy. And then also in the actual cabin, it was tiny, and they didn't have furniture that was big enough where we could sit next to each other. So that was like, but I do like Frederick, Maryland. So anyway, back to the goat milk.
How romantic.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I know that with the goat milk, we can add our own probiotics to it. How do you suggest people go about figuring out what to add?
So we do have a video. There's some stuff you can do. So we have a video on our website if you click on the raw goat's milk section of our website, but it's pretty simple. So I wanted to sort of break down the idea that milk fermentation is difficult, because it's really not. It's really the easiest type of fermentation. And also, at Green Juju, we were looking to not only highlight what makes milk so special, which is the milk itself. We don't want to lose, we don't want to lose sight of the fact that milk is so medicinal, raw milk, because it's milk, right? And because of what it is. But fermentation is a great bonus. And obviously I love fermentation and, that, et cetera, et cetera. So basically you can take any viable probiotic supplement that has at least 2 billion probiotics. And we usually reference this per quart, but obviously you can do more than that. So a good example, that would be if you were doing, the ones we highlight on our site are the Adored Beast ones. So if you were doing Phytos Flora, it would be like 2 to 4 billion per quart. But if you happen to be doing love bugs, it's like 30 billion, right? It's just depending on the size. So that part, you want to have at least over a certain amount, but it's not like you have to have a specific amount per thing. You could always go over that, of course, is what I'm trying to say. So take any probiotic and 2 to 4 that has at least 2 billion probiotics, thaw out your goat milk, put it in the quart, shake it up, and leave it on your counter for 24 hours, or use, a raw yogurt maker like I do, but you can just leave it on your counter. And then you have your specifically fermented, raw, dairy beverage. And that kind of started from last December. I was just randomly thought of like, oh, if I use, Phytos flora to ferment this raw milk, I'll have like the world's first, canine specific fermented dairy beverage. So then I started to experiment with that and texted Julianne Lee, and, and we kind of got that idea going, and that kind of melded into me and Kelly's idea for like, but I mean, to be honest with you, right now I've been feeding a lot of, I have been doing some fermentation, obviously, with the milk, but I've been feeding it a lot to Huckleberry, just plain. And so this allows you to do that, or, make it lactose free, however you want to do it. And it really serves our mission of helping every animal, regardless if they're sensitive or not. And so it's very, very easy. And the thing that's unique about what we're doing is if the product is already fermented or has probiotics in it, those will be the ones that proliferate every time. So what we want is to do that. But also the other thing to consider as well is if you just leave raw milk in the fridge, it ferments itself. Because what does that become? Sour milk. And sour milk is even healthier. So you don't even have to like do anything. Even if you just use it up to its 2-week lifespan, non-fermented, you'll technically get fermented milk anyway.
So one of the things that my girl Penny needed at one point, we had a health crisis with her a couple years ago that was basically brought about by the fact that she had 4 rounds of antibiotics within like a 6-month period of time. And then it took us another year to get her gut health back under control. So one of the things that we did for her was and I'm probably going to butcher this word, but it's the probiotic called Saccharomyces boulardii, which sounds like Boyardee in my head. But is that, now I know that's like a slightly different probiotic. Is that something that you can ferment with also?
Yeah, you should be able to, as long as it'll grow and it's a viable supplement. So really anything. And it's also, I should mention too, sort of a low-key way to check to see if your probiotics are actually working. Because if they grow, then they're definitely working. Because we've all get a powder and we're like, okay, I'm putting this powder in my dog's diet, but does this work, right? It's one of the reasons that I'm also about the whole food probiotics. Like if you were using, BAM's beets, you can smell the acetic acid because it's a fermented vegetable. So, there's bacteria there. But yeah, that any species that you're doing there should, eat that lactose and ferment the beverage.
And so once we leave it out on the counter overnight, which like that's totally my speed of like being able to do things. Will it look different? Will it smell different? How would we know then that our probiotics are active?
That's a great question. So just an FYI to the listeners, goat ferments are typically thinner. So you will it's not going to be exactly thin. So, really thick. You can get thicker and thicker, and I'll talk about how to do that in a second. But, so the first thing that you'll probably see is separation of the whey and the, of the curd essentially. So you'll notice that obviously you're going to shake it up when you feed it, and ours is in a bottle that you can see through. So you'll actually start to see that. And then you'll notice the smell. Usually it'll smell like cheese to some degree. I know the Phytos flora smells exactly like string cheese, which is interesting. It's interesting to me because this is the stuff I do for fun. So it's ridiculous. What was I going to say? Oh yeah. So I would look for thickness to some degree, the smelling like cheese part and then, the separation, but it's really foolproof. There's not going to be situations really where you're going to do it and you're like, is this bad? I mean, you'd probably, if it was bad, because you would start, I mean, let me put it this way. The worst thing that would happen would be those probiotics don't proliferate and it's raw milk that is delicious and nutritious for your animal, right? That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever said. Delicious and nutritious. Now, if you want to work on making yours thick, here's how you do that over time. So first of all, you need to buy this yogurt maker that I use that a lot of people have reached out to me that said that they bought it, which is by a brand. It's Luvele, Luvelle. It's the only, as far as I know, it's the only raw yogurt maker I could find. So basically, you're doing the same process that I just mentioned, except this will keep it at either 98 degrees, 100 degrees, or 104 degrees. So basically, when you raise the temperature, the bacteria proliferate more and you get a more consistent ferment. So what you want to do is do your ferment. So let's say you take your love bugs from Adored Beast, you put it in there, you do your ferment, you have that going. Okay, it's a good ferment. It's a little thin. Great. Totally awesome. Then on your next batch, you take some of the last ferment. Typically, I recommend about 1/4 of a cup to 32 ounces. Put it in your next batch of raw milk. Put it in your yogurt maker. And as that happens, the cultures, become more and more viable each time. And by the way, you can do this forever. So now, if you're being really thrifty, and I know Kimberly likes to be very thrifty, you can, you only have to buy the probiotic once, right, in order to do that. And as time goes on, it'll get, typically thicker and thicker. But the heat and then the multiple batches I remember before Lua passed, I was fermenting local raw colostrum for her. And I was like 30 batches deep in that. And that was like insanely thick. But that's also it was cow colostrum. So that was a little bit different. But that was like crazy. So that's kind of what to expect and how you can get it to be thicker. But ultimately, you're not going to get it like, it's never going to be grocery store thick, because that has to do with heat. Mm-hmm. So those proteins gel together. And so it's not just the bacteria, it's the heating of the milk as well. But that's not important to your dog or cat.
So what about histamines? One thing that I hear about ferments is some people say, well, my dogs can't have fermented foods because the histamines cause a reaction. What is the connection there?
Let me just touch on one other nerdy thing we were just talking about last, and then it's a great question. So the other thing I was thinking too is, if you really wanted to get nerdy, and you wanted it thick, you could make Greek yogurt out of it, like get a Greek yogurt culture and then strain that out, or you could make cheese out of it too. So that's something you do with our raw milk, which would be very easy. You can make raw cheese, and it would be really, really thick. So have I done that? Yes.
Yes, that's about to ask. Have you done that?
So it's a thing. And I used to actually do that for Lua too. But so for the histamine thing, I feel like in the raw feeding community, this is like all the rage. Whether or not, even when it's not fermented foods, it's about histamines. And I feel like it's kind of something that people are focusing on, but they won't be focusing on, like 2 years from now or whatever it might be, because it's just kind of where we're at. Histamines can be an issue, and dogs and cats can have different sensitivities to them. In my experience, most don't, and shouldn't really avoid fermented foods unless they're on an MAOI medication, which inhibits the MAO system, which gets rid of excess histamines for your dog's body or your dog's body from foods. And also, not all fermented foods have a ton of histamines. They have varying amounts of histamines. So like a mildly fermented goat milk is not really going to be super high in histamines. But going back to what I said before, your dog's body has a system for doing that. So your dog better than dog or cat better than anyone. And I'm something I'm thinking about a lot now is varied diets. And I think, maybe we're a little bit too militaristic into this is exactly what dogs need for fat to protein. And this is what, when it's really just so individual, just like people. But so your dog may have a histamine, sensitivity, but I would say that that's probably, I didn't see it very much. And working with fermented foods and specific disease conditions for like 10 years, with dogs all across the country, I would find that animals that had yeast issues or allergy issues benefited from more fermented foods than not fermented foods. Mm-hmm. But with that being said, some animals probably aren't great with fermented foods, or I'd say it's probably a smaller, grouping, but that's where, one of the reasons I wanted to work with Green Juju was we have so many different options, be it, stepping in the freeze-dried category, be it fermented or non-fermented, right? You could ferment the Bailey's blend, or you could do the just greens, or you could do the fresh Bailey's blend, to be able to kind of do that. But so in conclusion, I think it's overhyped, but also it's up to what works for your dog or cat. We love cats too. I know we don't say cat a lot, but cats are great.
So I know you also talked about being able to make lactose-free goat milk. Can you talk about that a little? And also, how would you know if your dog needed that?
I would say the second part of that question is a great question. So it would be a very, very tiny percentage of dogs and cats that are actually lactose intolerant, because lactose is just a totally different thing in raw milk versus, pasteurized milk. Lactose becomes lactose B in pasteurized milk, which is basically easier for the body to convert. It's a sugar, and so it just basically goes into your bloodstream a lot easier as just basically like a sugar for, energy, wherein lactose, feeds bacteria and has sort of other, there's also, bacteria present in raw milk that help to digest lactose. So it's just a whole different experience for people as well, right? But there would be some people who would be obviously still lactose intolerant to milk. It would just be a much smaller proportion. So you would just generally see, a general sensitivity to it. You might see like some skin issues. You might see some like, some severe skin issues very quickly, things like that, digestive issues. So it really just depends. But it's even easier to make it lactose free. We worked with the experimentation I did was with a brand called Milk Aid, and that was just 10 drops per 16 ounces. So 1 pint. So basically anytime you go to the grocery store and get lactose free dairy, they just are adding the lactase enzyme, which breaks down lactose. So this is just 10 drops of lactase and in your fridge for 24 hours. And it's 100% lactose-free milk. So those few animals that couldn't enjoy milk can now get the most nutritionally diverse food on the planet. I really wanted those animals to be able to have access to the milk because, I understand you can obviously do a diet that's great for a dog without dairy products, but it is the single biggest factor in getting back to wellness for the animals I've worked with for the past 10 years, and the animals we collectively worked with, in terms of different disease conditions. So, you want it to be available as at least an option for those animals. So that's another thing as well. So, and then the other thing you could do too is if your animal is lactose intolerant, you could feed them raw cheese as well, because there's no lactose in cheese. So it's just kind of a lot of people don't know that, but obviously just turn your cheese over and look at the grams of sugar on there and it says 0. So it's a good indicator.
So one of the other things that has been kind of a buzzword, right, has been the keto idea. So is that also, if somebody was doing a really strict keto diet, is that another time that they would want to do the lactose-free milk?
Yeah, that would be great. I will say a lot of our products fit with, really strict keto. Let's say you were doing like a 4-to-1 ketogenic diet or something like that. All of our products work where you could do the just greens, you could do, the Bailey's blend, the lower carbohydrate blends. but yeah, that would reduce, all of the, so basically per cup, you have 12 grams of milk is an incredibly balanced food. So per ounce, you have 1 gram of protein, 1 gram of fat, and 1.5 grams of carbs. So that would just reduce it down to 0, which would be good. And so there's a lot of people working within that scale. My own dog in the current iteration of, I change his food a lot, but like everyone has like a base, I feel like, that they just do, especially like if they're like busy or something, and so like with his base, he's getting let me just see hang on one second, I'm going to give you the exact numbers here. So he's getting so this is per meal, right? So he's getting 4 ounces of milk or fermented raw milk. He's getting 1 egg yolk, and I formulated for a local company here in Lancaster. I formulated a rabbit and salmon blend, and he would be getting 4.5 ounces of that per meal as well. And basically, all that to say, he's getting somewhere around like I think it's 263 calories from fat and just right about the same amount from protein. So that's like a 1-to-1 fat to protein diet by calories. Wherein if you feed, for instance, the goat salmon blend I did, that's a 1-to-1. That's where you're talking about a more ketogenic diet. And that's a 1-to-1 fat to protein ratio by weight. So you'd be getting, let's say, 10 grams of protein, 10 grams of fat, which is obviously 2 times. That would be a 2-to-1 ketogenic diet. So I don't know why I told you all that, but it relates
nice
somehow.
To hear.
Yeah.
That's nice to know. So I have a question for you. Years ago, I wrote a blog post about raw goat's milk and kefir, and because people were asking me, well, which one should I give to my dog? So can you tell us, obviously we know the difference between raw goat's milk and kefir, but is one better, or is it best to do alternate between the two?
Yeah. I'm just a fan of rotation just generally. So I have fermented our milk with, Maple's probiotic. I've done it with mine. I've done it with, a local kefir here. I've done it with, all different things. So kefir is going to be higher. And the thing about kefir that's different than like yogurt and things like that, it's just going to be higher in healthy yeast. So great for yeasty animals, great for, especially a large part of the diet, but just great for, general getting different bacteria and healthy yeast types in. But I would recommend going between all those things. So get our goat's milk and feed it, I don't want to use the word plain or regular, but feed it, pure. And then also feed our, ferment the next batch, or however you want to do that. Or, just find out what works best for your dog. There are some dogs where, they're going to do better on kefir every time. And that's great. And I wouldn't want to, say you have to rotate or something like that. It's kind of like when you get into foods, it's great to rotate between foods, but if you have a dog that's insanely, sensitive, and you found a food or 2 foods that work, it's probably just best to do that, right? Because, you're not, so it really just depends.
I know some states, or I've seen people comment about this question online. I guess some states have very strict raw milk laws. And does that go for goat milk also? Is there any regulatory concern?
That goes for all milk, but that's all milk for human consumption.
Okay.
So pet food consumption, you can legally go across state lines, and human, you can't. Okay. So if you're in Maryland and you drive across the border in Pennsylvania, where it's much you can buy raw milk, at the grocery store here, and you bought it and brought it back to Maryland, technically that would be illegal, which is ridiculous. But, right. So for human consumption, yeah, but not for, it just depends. Regulatory, there are certain states like Vermont and Texas require colorants.
Mm-hmm.
And then Nevada requires like insane. We're not sold in Nevada because you either have to put charcoal in it or artificial blue-green dye. And it has to be artificial blue-green dye. You can be like, hey, can I do spirulina or something like that? As like a natural, but aside from that, you can obviously sell pet milk in all different markets. So
I've seen that question pop up several times.
Oh, and then I think the state of Massachusetts I think there's some litigation going on there, but I think they just stopped the sale of pet milk because they tried to classify that under their human law, which that doesn't really make any sense, but I'm not necessarily like on the front lines for that. I just hear things. So I would imagine that will probably go back to normal, in the relative near future would be my guess.
Okay. Cause I think the person who was talking about it was from Massachusetts. So
yeah. But the nice thing about Massachusetts is you're very close to other states that you could just go and get the pet milk in. So that's what's great about living up here is like, I remember we used to live in Philly and we'd drive to the vet in Pennsylvania, but we'd have to go through Delaware and Maryland to get there. So it's like, it's a little bit crazy when you come from, we lived in California and I lived in Seattle before that, to be like, oh yeah, I can, here in Lancaster, we're like under 3 hours from, Baltimore, Washington, DC, New York City, a bunch of cities. So that's pretty cool.
So Kimberly, do you want to nerd out about the animal biomes?
Oh my God, yes. Oh my God. Oh my God. It's so cool. And, the first time I did it, I didn't have a really great experience, lots of misunderstandings. I didn't understand the report. It was just too much. But this time the reports are so much nicer and so much easier to go through. And I have looked at my report probably on a daily basis since I got it. I sent a copy to Erin for her birthday.
Yes.
Oh, wow. That's a great birthday present.
It was my birthday present to have something to nerd out on.
You two are going to be fast friends because that's what she loves to do. But yeah, it's kind of cool. Just going through all the reports. I'm actually most looking forward to talking to my vet about it, but I'm also reaching out to other people, other holistic veterinarians, to send them a copy because I'm glad that they have supplements and that's great and all, but I'm curious to know if people can do the same thing food wise, just to basically build up some bacteria, and maybe tone down other bacteria, because they do have recommendations like, if you want to do, bring this down, you add fiber or, or chia seeds or, they have all of these recommendations in there. But I'm curious to know, what can we do? Because my thought is, given the economy right now, with people are going to spend, I actually got the test for a really good price, thank you, Capital One. But, people are spending upwards of $100 for the test. And it's recommended that you do it a few times because you're going to want to do the test. You get the results, you put your dog on the supplement. And then 2 weeks after you end, you want to test again to see what the changes are. And then you may have to do more things. And the supplement for my dog is going to be $225 a month. And I just can see me recommending that to my followers. And they're just like, yeah, no, that's not happening. So it's like, it would be nice to have you can do the supplement for people who just want an easy thing to do. Like, I just give this to my dog once or twice a day. I'm good. And then something where people can incorporate it into their dog's diet by adding different foods for, a 30-day or a 60-day period and then retesting to see what happens.
Yeah. That's an interesting, it's obviously coming at it from a slightly different angle, in terms of what I was talking about with different sources and building certain things, and I'm not as familiar with maybe they limit things or something like that when you're doing that sort of, inoculation with their supplement and that kind of stuff. But for me, it could be another tool in your toolbox, and who knows, maybe that works better for your animal or whatever it might be. But the other thing too is, in sort of a related note, going back to like the supplementation and fermenting it into raw dairy. The cool thing is if you find a supplement that really works for your dog, you can do both. Yeah. So you can ferment it into the dairy to get a different medium of delivery for that. And then you could use the supplement as well. Or let's say you love Adored Yeast products and you want to use, fermented love bugs into the milk, and then you want to use Phytosflora or whatever it might be. But in the case of, I don't know, because I haven't tried to see if that would work or not, which would be very interesting to see that. So folks at Animal Biome, if you're listening to this, reach out to me. But it'd be very interesting. But, in regards to whatever supplement works for your animal, you can kind of double it up and do that, which I think is another just kind of interesting concept. I'm excited to see that play out more.
Yeah. I think the thing that really made my brain started just running, the consultation was fantastic. I don't think I was a good person for a consultation because half of my brain was just fast forwarding into all these different places. And I'm trying to listen to the person too. So I ended up having to call her back because I was just like, I missed all of this. But thankfully she summarized it and sent me an email. But I started thinking about the different strains of probiotics in various supplements for dogs. And when I had my dog tested, I reached out to 2 companies to ask them, what strains are in your supplements, and found that, well, one company didn't have any strains and the other company only had 1 strain. And I began to wonder, like, with all of the supplements that are out there on the market, I think a lot of people will look at this like something like Animal Biome, or simply my dog has gut issues. I'm going to go get a digestive supplement. And this is something that I've recommended for years. Go get a digestive supplement. But it's 1 strain and yes, it's a lot of it in there, but it's still just 1 strain. And I'm curious, what benefit is that really giving to our dog when we compare it to fermented foods that have all these different types of, a whole colony of bacteria going on in there?
Yeah. And I think too, like, somebody's upset. So how dare you? No, I'm just kidding. No, I think it's an interesting thing because when you look at like, and I don't know if this will be like forever, but I'll tell you right now, I started to, I take a couple supplements with I eat a lot of, I'm a very regimented eater, except, dinner is more fun, I guess. But aside from that, I eat a lot of raw and foods and animal products and that kind of thing. But with my, pint of milk and 3 raw egg yolks every morning, I eat some supplements and that kind of thing. But I started taking this probiotic so Maple takes the toddler version. It's from a company called Love Bug. And I was doing a lot of research into toddler probiotics after she turned 1 that I add to her raw milk. And I was like, oh, this is a really cool brand. I liked that it was started by like 2 women who had babies who saw that like there was a need for like varied baby probiotics because of the fact that like, babies with formula and, just foods in general they're not really getting enough probiotics. So I really liked that part of it. And I went into like the quality part and I was like, oh, I'm going to try their like adult advanced probiotic just for myself in terms of doing that. And I noticed a huge difference when I travel, because I'm the type of person who like, even if I have like a really early flight, I can't just like, I'm going to go to bed at 7. And then like, I'll still go to bed at like 12:30 or 1 and I'm getting up at 4 a.m. And then it's like, and I would sometimes have digestive issues. And I noticed that when I started taking this probiotic, I didn't anymore. And I was like, oh, this is a really great product. So that's currently the one I give Huckleberry. So I give him that probiotic every morning, but then I also give him, Cocoa Yo when I want to do that. And that's another 10 billion probiotics. I give him Bam's Beets. I give him, the dairy. I do all of that stuff. But like, it just sort of outlines like, that's how we kind of arrive at these things sometimes. It's not dog specific. It's not anything like that, but it seems to be working really well for him. And sometimes if he's doing if let's say I'm just doing an all egg and milk meal, I'll just take Maple's, hers is in a powder. I'll just take her probiotic and put that in the milk. And then that's a different varying species of probiotics. So, it just depends on that. But I think you're right. Definitely, if you're doing a probiotic supplement, I'd recommend more than one strain for sure. The more, the better. I think the one I have is 15 or something, which, again, isn't hundreds, but the raw milk I have has hundreds. And so that's a good thing as well. But so I think it's really on a regular basis for me, it's the probiotic. I take fiber because I drink a lot of raw milk. And so, and then I take cod liver oil. And that's my, I try to be as food-based as possible. I think it's easy to kind of go crazy with supplements. And I'm the type of brain that would. And so, I try to rein it in there.
Yeah. I started adding fiber to my dog's diet by the recommendation from Animal Biome, because I have been feeding vegetables to my dogs and I consider, that's their fiber source. But, of course, every dog has different needs. And so I decided to just, again, shake it up. And it's funny because although I very much believe in variety, it's so hard to remember sometimes that that's across the board, not just with the proteins, but, with the different types of vegetables, even my holistic vet with the mushrooms that I give to my dogs, not psychedelic, but the mushrooms, I use 3 different brands because she wants me to alternate the mushrooms out, not just stick with one brand.
So what did you add for fiber?
Oh, I found this cool supplement at the store. It's for humans. I don't know the name of it, but it's one of those, non-GMO organic type products. And I was like, this is for my dogs. And so that's what I purchased. Oh my God, that was so freaky. Billy, you were being so still that I thought you were frozen. And I was just like, I'll just keep talking until he comes back. But then your eyes moved and it's like, there he is.
That makes sense.
But yeah, it's just something that I'm trying out, but I still have so much, homework to do on this. I think when companies like Animal Biome, and, they don't really account for people like me, who I'm just like, I want to dig into every single thing. And now I need to go print out the report so I can go to various supplement stores and read the backs of the bottles because I want to know, it's like, can any of these, are they found in supplement stores? And I'm going to go to the co-op. There's a co-op, a City South, and talk to them about, what they're bringing in as far as from all the different farms around the area. They just cracked open. I think I'll be obsessed with this for at least a month.
Yeah. It's interesting. The other thing we talk about a lot too is, rotating between the different Green Juju blends for different fiber types. For me personally, I take psyllium husk for my own diet. It's just kind of like a quick and easy, I take 4 per pint of milk that I drink, which is 1 to 2 a day. So it just depends, but I'm just trying to, feed all that bacteria. And I unfortunately, unless I'm I'm going home over the 4th of July to Wisconsin and all bets are off and I just eat the best stuff on earth. That's the worst for you constantly. But other than that, I unfortunately, when you're in my line of work, you think about nutrients all the time. So, you're kind of that's where it comes through. So Emily, my wife, takes a little bit more supplements, but I think that's because she's an actual person and isn't a totally regimented, I'm eating this every morning for the rest of my life. So, and it was, I don't know why this reminded me of this, but, cause you said that I was standing so still or whatever, but, so Emily always makes fun of me because I'm not an emotional person at all. And, so it's kind of funny because we're currently in the process of rewatching the show Dexter, which is about a serial killer. And whenever he's talking to someone or reflecting, she always looks at me and she's like, that's like you. I don't know how to take that, but
I love that media comes up on every one of our podcasts somehow. I mean, it's
of course. Now that we have a child, media is like we get from 8 p.m. on to just like eat and then watch several hours of shows, and that is like the greatest time of the day. So it's amazing.
I'm trying to find the one I have. It has like apple fiber, and it has 3 different things where it's the source of the fiber.
Well, and I think apple fiber with like pectin specifically is known for it's, I don't want to butcher this, but I was talking to a guy named Rowan who does animal nutrition in the UK. I think he was talking about how they're looking at specific microbes that encourage longevity and anti-aging and that kind of stuff. And I think they were talking about pectin and apple fiber being specific, that those bacteria like those types of fiber. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah, I can't find it, but it's kind of cool. It's fun to just do something different, especially because I've been feeding raw for 8-9 years now. And it just blows me away that every single year I learn something absolutely new about everything that I'm doing. And it's kind of cool everything just stays fresh, and I can change up my dog's diet just to, because whenever I do something for one dog, I just do it for all dogs because they're in the same environment. And although they're individuals, they're pretty close. They're eating the exact same diet. They're getting the same exercise. They're exposed to all the goodness and the grossness of my property. There's a dead mole and a dead snake that I failed to bury. I thought I was clever and just threw it in a bush.
Yeah.
Nope. They keep dragging them out. It's gross.
Well, that's the interesting thing just generally, I think, about the space that we're in is like, I was just asked to do, I don't think I can say what it is, but I was just asked to do an event in like October. And, I said, I'll do it for sure. But, give me a few days to think about like a title, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking to myself, like, maybe I'll do something like, 2022, a year in review in nutrition, because I feel like everything changes so much in terms of my own personal outlook and, what I learn from, doing this for a living and that kind of thing. And so I think it'd be cool just to be like, here are the new, all of the new interesting things or spins, and takes that I came across throughout the year. So I totally am with you on that.
Yeah, I think it's pretty fascinating because, right now, I mean, not only I'm buried into this whole gut stuff, but also finances, because I'm hearing from so many people where they can't afford all of these different things. There's a new cool supplement that just came out and I'm trying a sample of it. I texted you about it. Mm-hmm. But, the big pushback on it is that it's $80 for 8.5 ounces. And so people, since it's new, no one's going to spend that much money unless it's absolutely proven. And the flip side to that is what's proven to one dog may not be much for another dog. So, I mean, it's still kind of this and
like
that.
A big investment.
Exactly. But it's funny to me because whenever things like this come out, people break down the ingredients and sort of feel like, well, I'll just make this at home. And that's great. And I think it's awesome. The problem is, you think about, well, where did all of this come from? What type of soil was it grown in? When was it harvested? I'm actually going on an herb walk. Erin, I'm going on an herb walk with Dr. Donna Kelleher. She's like our local famous veterinarian. She messaged me on Instagram and she mentioned that she takes veterinarians out on herb walks because she wants to teach them about harvesting herbs for their patients. And I don't even know why she messaged me this, because I was just like, I want to go. Can I go? And she was like, yeah. She's like, I'll open it up for, regular people too. And so I'm going on the 28th. I'm taking the day off and driving up north. All that gas money to drive up north, but it'll be worth it because it's something that I've always wanted to do. And I have so many friends with like my property, 5 acres. is like, that's the teeny property. All of my friends live on like 20 acres and 30 acres and stuff, and they have so much growing. And so now next year I'll be able to go and start harvesting like nettles and things, because I also think that if it's locally grown, that it'll even be better for my dogs rather than getting something from across the country. So I'm so excited about that.
That's cool. And especially where you live. I mean, it's so rainy and, moist all the time that I feel like you're in an area for a lot of growth like that, for like herbs and mushrooms. And
we used to have tons of stuff growing here, but Johan put a stop to that quite a few years ago. And so now we have our lovely golf course property, that I call it. But someone came to our property once and we were just walking around and she started pointing out all the things that we had. And I was just like, what? It's all gone now. Because we used to have nettles here, but we don't have nettles anymore.
Well, all you need to do is buy a bag of freeze-dried Just Greens. And that's my other product plug. Actually, I will give you a serious product plug, because budget is a huge part of life right now for most people. So one of the things we wanted to do with releasing our goat milk was we wanted something on the market people could trust, first and foremost. And we wanted something on the market that was the highest quality that you could possibly get, right? And so, I inspect all the farms that we work with. This milk is certified for human consumption in the state of Pennsylvania. So they go through all the testing to get it on a grocery store shelf. And this is, and as far as central Pennsylvania goes, the soil here is amazing, and which Kimberly knows all about. And that translates into, this milk. And we are the most affordable milk on the market. So we are the lowest price point. And that's for a reason, because we want people to have access to this. We want enough people, as many people as they can, to be able to feed something like this at every budget type. So it's a really rare thing when the highest quality can actually pair with the best pricing.
Yeah.
And so really proud of that. And also, just going out to see these farmers, and I got a trip planned in July here with Chris and his dad, the guy who runs the facility where our products are made. I should mention too, so we have our facility in Oregon, which all the other products are made at. Our 3 new products are made where I live in Lancaster. They are made at someone else's facility, but I'm the chairman of the board of directors of that facility. So we are more vested there than just having someone else make our products. But yeah, it excites me to be able to go out with the farmers and, to meet them and hear their story. And when we were, when we went out to go see Sam's farm, the first farm that we started buying milk from, got to meet him and his wife and all of his kids. And I had met them previously, but I got to kind of get reacquainted with them. And then, they took us over to the milk tank and they gave Maple a cup of raw goat's milk, and she was like spilling it all over herself and, drinking tiny amounts of it. And so it's just a nice experience. And I'm so excited to be able to translate that quality to, the reception has been great so far. Like, people have been really excited, and that really means a lot to us.
So you kind of just reminded me of something that happened. Kimberly, you'll remember this on social media a couple months back. I know you live a lot. There's a lot of Amish in that area, and that's like a lightning rod term.
For sure.
Sometimes there's a connection with puppy mills and things like that, but there's also, I don't know, I guess I trust anything that you're personally inspecting, and it's just sort of a negative generalization to think that all Amish are doing puppy mills or something. I think there's a lot that are also kind of doing their regenerative agriculture as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's people, and people in groups do different behaviors. I mean, I don't know. It's such an interesting thing because for some reason, obviously we know the negative connotation that would happen if we applied that same thinking to other groups based on race or religion or whatever it might be. But for some reason, people just think like, oh, it's okay if it's the Amish, though, because some of them have had puppy mills. So I can all of a sudden say, oh, I don't buy Amish because they do puppy mills. Well, all Amish don't all do everything.
Yeah.
So I, for instance, was actually kind of interesting. Ironically for me, I actually tried to adopt a dog and got rejected. So I don't know who would have given the dog a better life, but that person has the dog now. So that's great. And when I was had my first meeting with Chris, the guy who owns this facility, I was talking about a different breeder I know and who was wanting to give us a raw fed French bulldog. And I was like, oh, yeah, so I'm planning on doing that. And, I got done with that meeting and Chris emailed me and he said, I'm a raw French bulldog breeder. And I don't know if we're going to work together, but I really want you to have one of my dogs for free. They're 2 weeks old right now. And I was like, well, okay, that sounds like an offer I can't refuse. And his dogs are amazing. They are born on the farm. They're in and out of barns. They're being inoculated with all those amazing healthy yeasts and bacteria. And I take him out there for meetings and he gets to, see, his half siblings and parents and that kind of thing. And he's third generation raw fed. I mean, he's an amazing breeder and he's Amish as well. Right. And so like if somebody were to say, oh, you got your dog for an Amish person, that would have a huge negative connotation, which would not be deserved at all because Chris does an amazing job. And so, I would urge people that say blanket phrases like that to think about applying that to another group of people and you think to yourself, like, I sound ridiculous. It's as ridiculous. And remember, the only thing that makes someone Amish is the religion they practice.
Yeah.
And so you are, if you say all Amish people do something, you are discriminating against an entire religion. So I would encourage people not to do that. And lastly, I would say, we require a certain standard of all of our farmers. It doesn't matter if they're Amish or not. And I would say that in my experience from working with the Amish for the last 10 years, that they are definitely more willing to do a lot of the crazy things that I've required over the years in terms of quality, in terms of not using chemicals, in terms of free ranging animals, in terms of all those sorts of things. And actually today I was out, doing the beets and cabbage. And it was so funny because Chris's kids it was like two of his daughters and his son, they're probably all like between like 3 and 8 or something, were riding around in a mini buggy that was being pulled by a pony. I was like, I get to see all these like idyllic scenes every time I go out there. And his daughter, who's like 3, he attaches, because they're like free range kids, they can go wherever they want on the farm. And so he attaches a bell to her back so they know where she is.
It's awesome.
Thank you for just sharing more about that because, I think sometimes if we see, obviously by definition, the Amish aren't on social media and we're not seeing reality shows about them unless it's on Rumspringa. And so because we're not seeing it and then we see this negative story of, on TV or 60 Minutes or something about the puppy mills, like, because that's all we've ever seen, it starts to be like all that we think. And so I appreciate you sharing, the other side of that from your own personal experiences.
It's funny because that discussion on my page came up again this week because someone came, Solutions is coming out. And so someone was asking a question. And so that popped up to the feed and then more people started seeing it. And so I had to go through another round of blocking and banning. That's fun.
Yeah, it's a real hot button issue. But my thing is like, it's like for most things, I like Instagram because it's just pictures and that's an amazing thing for me. I think I like to take a cue from the Amish. I think they're actually the happiest people I'm ever around. I just thought it was like, he would probably think this is funny that I'm sharing this. Obviously, you'll never hear it. But going back to Chris, he was talking about racing people, like foot racing. And he's like, sometimes I just come out of the house and I run up to the facility just because it's fun. It's like, that's an amazing outlook on life. Like, who says that? And so, they're not on social media. They don't watch the news. They don't have all these negative influences. So for me, I'm like, I try to, emulate that to some degree, where I'm like, this is my family. That's my number one priority. And this is my, tribe of people in my community and my extended family. And I'm just going to really concentrate on there and those relationships.
Yeah.
And so I think people on the internet could do more of that and just be like, I'm going to do what works for me. And if other people don't do it, it's okay. Yeah. I'll just move on. Right. Because no one ever like changes anyone's mind on the internet. So
exactly.
there's no point to like, that's kind of like my personal philosophy. I do a lot in, I make products, and I know not everyone's going to love those products. And if they don't, that's fine. You can totally do something else. But for those that like it, great. So it's, I think people can definitely get charged about that issue. And I definitely have appreciated Kimberly throughout the years.
I know, exactly.
Helping me out with that. And
I know, that's what I was going to tag.
We need to focus your energy somewhere. So
get a little dose of guilt thrown in there.
Exactly.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It was great seeing you, Billy. Before we let you go, I've been meaning to say this since you brought up Jess Green. So I don't know why I did this, but I was doing meal prep a week ago, last weekend. And I have this bag of Jess Greens, and I don't even know where it came from. I don't know if it came from Kelly, if I bought it. I don't know. I've had it forever. And so I just decided to hydrate it and throw it into my meal prep. And I swear to God, my dogs went insane. And I feel kind of offended because I feel like I am a good cook when it comes to raw food. But they went absolutely bonkers for this food. And I have a whole batch of it. And I actually messaged Kelly about it because I ended up having to buy, I bought 2 big bags of the Jess Greens. So if anyone's listening.
That's how we get you.
I know. Add the Jess Greens to your meal prep. I think someone even asked me, it's like, are you doing that instead of Dr. Harvey's? No, I'm not. I'm still doing my Dr. Harvey's. I just do less of it. But the Jess Greens is awesome. And one more question, going back to the goat's milk. Can you add the Jess Greens to the goat's milk?
Yeah, so Jess Greens is our core. I mean, you're talking about the freeze-dried version,
the freeze-dried,
which is amazing. And Jess Greens is the core product of Green Juju. It is, was initially Green Juju, right? It was, and so that's always going to be, I think, the most special Green Juju product because it really was the starter of a concept, right? It was, something that we do the best still, in terms of juicing it and adding the pulp back and doing some things. And the freeze-dried version has been wildly successful. We didn't really know, one of the great things about a company with 2 people is whatever we want to do and think is cool, we can just do. There's no bureaucracy of people deciding what we should do in terms of products. So with that, we were like, we don't know what the demand will be, but Kelly wanted to do it for a really long time. So that's been really cool. But yes, one of the benefits of the freeze-dried Jess Greens is we don't put any bone broth in it because you can rehydrate it with, whatever bone broth works for your animal. So whether you want to do our duck or a bison or something, or the milk is another great one. We just did a post on that online about how, it's a wonderful source of probiotics and then the prebiotics as well. And they're all, I guess a good way to end this, because we've been talking about this throughout the whole thing and the difference between like probiotics and food probiotics. They're all multifaceted. So I like to get as many things into my dog's diet that are multifaceted as possible. What I mean by that is it's a source of probiotics, vitamins, minerals, fiber. You want as many, that's what whole foods do. They provide many different nutrients as opposed to this supplement. It's kind of like Lewis fermented golden paste, right? It's going to have not only the curcumin, but it's going to have all the other plant compounds. It's going to have all these different things. It's going to have probiotics, fiber. I have to be very careful because, I'm getting therapy on my finger. So the cast is not here, right. But for those, they won't be able to see it, but But so you're not just doing like a curcumin supplement, right? You're getting all these multifaceted things. So I think a great way to do that would be, combining the freeze-dried just greens with the milk. So
I'm brilliant. That's
yes, exactly. That's why. So
all right.
It works. Well, thank you guys so much. Appreciate the opportunity to be on, and always a good time until I see you and we can eat Mexican food again. So
yes.
All right. Until next time.
See you guys later.